I've done some prep work here. You can see this is my Bible page. This is Psalm 86, and I just read through and I highlighted in sort of this peach color here some verses that stood out to me, and then the reoccurring theme that kept coming up was the Lord's steadfast love, and it's mentioned 3 times in the chapter. And so I picked verse 15. But you, O Lord, are a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. From that verse, I picked a few words, so narrowing it down, merciful God, abounding in steadfast love. And so that's what I want to put on the page. So I went ahead and made a couple things to get ready. One, I had prepped the page with actually a black Liquitex acrylic paint, and then I put some white acrylic paint over these areas of these white circles because I'm going to do some flowers with those. And I have a clean sheet of cardstock under my Bible page so that as I'm drawing, my pressure can kind of dissipate into that cardstock rather than pressing into artwork in pages that are just below this. I also took a ruler and made this little template. So I sort of traced the edge of my page. You can see my little mark here in the corner where I just marked the top and the bottom, and I just pushed it in so that the page is in line with the numbers coming down here. That way I have this template to practice my lettering on before I transfer it to the page. I did this. I don't usually go to all this trouble to do it ahead of time on a separate piece of paper. I tend to just mark it out on the actual Bible page and do my erasing there. But on the black paint, that would be very difficult for you to see and a little hard to erase the pencil mark on that. So I'm going to measure it out on this first and then transfer it and show you how I do that. So I basically took the center of the page where I'm going to want my lettering, and I took my ruler and I divided it up because I have 6 words and I want to stack them all on top of each other. So I just divided the space. Basically, I had about 5 inches here in the middle, and I just divided it by 6. And then I decided to move everything down just a little bit so that it's not exactly centered because I'm afraid that my top word will get squished into my flowers if I don't do that. So you just adjust as you need to and as you go. Look at me, I have paint on my hands. I'm really into this already. But I didn't think you'd want to sit and watch me paint. I also have a sample page out of my font finder so that I can use it as a reference for doing the letters. And I think I'm going to use this one here. Next thing I did after making my template and measuring out where I wanted the lines to go was I took the letters of the words and I assigned them a value so that I can find true center. And it's true that I've done this enough that I can count it out in my head usually or eyeball it, but I wanted to show you, in case you've never done this before, how to find the exact center of the words and line it up. So capital letters, which tend to be extra wide, get a value of 3. All of your standard lowercase letters get a value of 2, with the exception of I's, L's, and sometimes J, depending on how big your loop is. Those get a value of 1 because they're the thinnest. And so it's basically you're giving them a number to signify their width. So 3, 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1 gives you a total value for the word of 15. You divide that in half, that's 7.5. And so then I count to 7.5 from the beginning. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and a half would be partway into the C. 1 would be directly in the center of the C. So I'm just going to do that for each of these, and I've tallied them here so you can look at it as I'm dividing them. So you can see in my regular handwriting and just by eye, I've got everything shifted slightly to the left as I go down. So then when I do it on my template, I'll adjust it based on my new center mark that I've found by doing the division. Of course, I also wrote this very big, and I want to fit it into this little half circle size because my page is going to have the flowers around this outside edge, and so I had to leave room for those. So I'm even more cramped in the amount of space I'm giving myself for letters, but nice thing is I can adjust the size of the letters to reflect what I need. So I'm just going to go ahead and letter this, and I start with my letters that are on the center line and work to the right, and then I come back and work to the left. As you can see, I'm drifting a little bit on the page. That's why I have an eraser. It does take me a few times sometimes to get it straight and even the way I like it. So now I feel like I have it centered the way I want it. I think I'm going to go ahead and cut this now. I'm using a Uniball Signo gel pen, and it works really well over the top of acrylic paint. As you can see, even with all the planning, it's not an exact science. So I am going to go ahead and put a little more black paint here and let it dry. I'll go on working on more of the words. I found that with the gel pens, they actually do better if they don't seem to be going on smooth. And these generally do, but I think it's really because of the acrylic paint that I have it on too thick, and so I have some kind of ridges that the pen wants to get stuck on. I just find that if I let one coat dry of the gel pen and then I go back over, it tends to do better than if I just keep trying to work it all at the same time, as it seems like it lifts the ink again if I do that too soon. I have just my one little spot that still didn't quite leave enough room. I think I might have drawn these flowers a little bit further this direction than I originally intended. Use my heat tool to speed up the drying time a little. With acrylic paints, you really have to be careful with the heat gun because it can make it bubble. I don't tend to use it with the acrylic paint as much. I tend to try and keep a thinner coat and just let it dry on its own. Obviously, I got a thicker coat on today and I needed to do more, so I'm speeding it up for the sake of you guys watching. I have yet to find a gel pen that is flawless, but this one's pretty close. Much better than, in my opinion, than the Jelly Roll pens. I am scribbling on a tablet to keep it flowing well. Sometimes the gel tends to build up along the edge of the tip, and just scribbling a little helps clean that off. Okay, so I got the lettering done, yay! And I only really squished my abounding a little bit, so that should be good. So one last thing I wanted to do was talk about something that I brought up at the Bible journaling group about letter spacing. I've written a couple words here, and today when I was showing you how to assign a number value to the width of the letter for spacing, that's a very general way to find the center of your word. There are going to be some exceptions in how you put letters next to each other. So these two words are, each letter is spaced exactly 1/4 of an inch apart. If you kind of squint at the words, and so that you can't see the pencil lines that I drew, and you can kind of see that the W and the D kind of seem like they're farther away from the O and the R, instead of being word all nicely together. Why does it look that way? And so this isn't something I would analyze for every word and every letter, but it's definitely something when you look at a word and you say, something looks just a little off. This can be a way to check it. Same thing for the loves. If you kind of squint at the word so that you're just seeing the darker letters, it kind of seems like the L, O, and V are spaced about the same, but then the E and the S seem a little closer together. It doesn't seem even though it's spaced equally. And that's because of the space between the letters and the volume that it takes up. We have to account for it in spacing our letters. So we look at each space between the letters and we look at it as if it's a jar being filled with water. My water's red. Look how much more liquid, if we were looking at the volume of space between the letters, is here between the W and the O and between the R and the D compared to what's between the O and the R. So that's why it looks like that D and that W are just too far away. So how do you determine what the appropriate amount of space is? Each letter with an open side like this, W, R, C, E, S, anything with an open space on one side, the letter gets to claim part of that space. And if we go straight down from there and split the difference, the letter gets to have at least half of the space. So for the W, you go down and then halfway between. The W gets to claim part of that airspace. The R gets to claim some of that airspace. This is still a bigger volume than between the O and the R, which means we would have to scoot the O over a little in order for it to look balanced. Same thing here. We're going to split the difference for the D, and here's our new volume. And it's still, this is still more than here. And so we need to scoot it in to make it a similar volume to here. So if I'm starting my W and I'm thinking about giving it some more space, and I want the volume to be similar to there, I'm going to do my O about here. And my R can be the same distance spaced. And then my D, so I'm going to give myself some there, and my D some there. So okay, I didn't make them exactly the same size. That's not good. But do you see how now, when I write the word, and then you squint at it, you can see that the spaces seem a little more similar. So maybe the O could have come over just a little bit more, but it's looking better than here. Let's do it again with loves. So with the L, I'm going to give it half the space. With the V, I'm going to give it half the space. And with the E, I'm just going to come in a bit. So again, it's like just a portion in because the S gets to have some of this. So our big space These are actually quite similar. This might be a little big, but definitely this is much bigger. So we definitely want to move that O closer to the L. So I hope that helps you think about letter spacing. I know this seems pretty technical and you may never go to this level, but if something comes up, like I said, that just seems off, you can kind of do this in your mind and go, there's really a big extra space in the open area of an L, so my next letter needs to come closer. I'm going to go ahead and finish this page with some other acrylic paint. And I love these flowers because they really don't require a whole lot of effort to figure out how to draw them. If you can make a C or you can draw a crescent moon, you can pretty much do these flowers. So I just mixed up some acrylic paint color that I want, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint this while you watch.